Thank you, Father David. Good morning. Good morning, Reverend Fathers, sisters, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to present to you some aspects of the history of the Black Madonna, Our Lady of Czestochowa. There are many more stories written in that booklet that Father just mentioned. Tradition says St. Luke, the evangelist, had painted it on the table board from the house of Holy Family in Nazareth. St. Luke was a doctor and an artist, and he was asked to paint the image of Mary by the early Christians. Truly speaking, the author is unknown. This is the case for most of the icons. The picture of Our Lady of Czestochowa represents a Hoggiteria type of icon, which means literally a waypointer or a leader. The Blessed Virgin points with her right hand to Christ, who said of himself, "I am the way." It can also remind us as a scene from Cana of Galilee, where during a wedding party he said, Our Lady said, "Do whatever he says." Therefore, the picture has more than an aesthetical or artistic value. It is also a message, a reminder, and a prayer. According to the legend, it would be just about 2,000 years old. A scientific research into the Black Madonna painting confirmed its Byzantine origin, dating between 6th and 9th centuries. Long fingers, long oval face are typical Eastern features, and so is also the wax painting technique on wood. Therefore, we can say the painting is between 11 to 1300 years old. The painting is frequently called the Black Madonna. It refers to skin tones of Mary and Jesus. The image was painted with colors diluted and fused with wax and covered by protective vernix, which were subject to natural darkening due to age. Additionally, countless pots of incense and wax candles were burnt in the proximity of the picture. Also, it survived a fire in 1690. All of this contributed to its darkening. Tradition says the painting was in Jerusalem for 300 years, in Byzantium for 500 years, in Ruthenia another 500 years, and finally over 600 years in Czestochowa in Poland. St. Helen, mother of Constantine the Great, the first Christian emperor of Rome, brought it from Jerusalem to Constantinople. It was taken to Ruthenia as a gift to a nobleman called Lev for his achievements while on military service in Constantinople. Finally, due to frequent threats of invasion by Tatars and concern for the safety of the painting, Prince Ladislav Opolski, the governor of Ruthenia, decided to move it to his homeland in Upper Silesia. On the brow of a limestone hill called Jasna Góra, which means the mountain of light, within a few paces of the town of Czestochowa, the horses drawing the wagon with the painting stopped. No amount of coaxing, goading could make them go on. Mary appeared to Ladislaus in a dream and told him this was to be her new place, her new home. The miraculous image was placed in a small wooden church and given to the care of the Latin Rite hermits of St. Paul, whose followers are here to this day. However, the history written in documents has revealed the year 1382 as the year of founding of Jasna Góra Monastery, where Pauline monks were brought to from Hungary. It is understood that later that year, Prince Ladislaus has given them the image of Our Lady, although the documents on this subject seem to be silent. After bringing it from Ruthenia to Czestochowa, the fame of the picture of Our Lady soon spread far and wide. This monastery became the site of constant pilgrimages and the custodian of numerous priceless votive offerings. Unfortunately, such valuable gifts attracted a gang of Hussites, robbers, who sacked the monastery on Easter Day, 1430. They stole all the painting's valuable gift offerings and disfigured it by slashing it with the sword, cutting twice into the right cheek of Mary. They also broke into three pieces by throwing to the ground. The icon was restored in Krakow, the capital of Poland in those days and king's residency. The legend tells us that during this Hussite sacking of Jasna Góra shrine, the picture was placed on the cart with other booty, but the horses could not move the wagon. The looters threw the painting off the wagon and the horses moved. One of the riders, seeing the jewels and gold covering on the painting, slashed the painting twice with the sword. When he went to strike it a third time, he fell dead. The other riders fled for fear of divine retribution. Repeated efforts by skilled artists to patch the scars failed. Each time, the facial cuts reappeared. It is believed that it was the will of Mary that the scars should remain as a sign to all who would want to desecrate her shrine. The icon is also damaged in other places, especially on Mary's neck. One of them is the mark from an arrow when Tatars raided Ruthenia. Over the years, the icon was the reason and witness of numerous miracles of healing of the soul and body of the pilgrims. Over 1,000 recognized miracles have occurred here, accounts of which are being kept in the monastery with the dates as far back as 1400s. The icon is therefore known as the miraculous picture. The most spectacular miracle happened in 1540. It was the rising from death of 3 people from the same family, the mother and 2 young sons, simultaneously. Apart from the individual healing, there are also some miraculous events in the history of Poland where the icon took very important role. Poland was baptized in 966. While Russia accepted Christianity from Constantinople, Poland accepted Christianity from Rome. Thus, Poland was linked with the West and so created the Central Europe, the barricade against the Byzantine influence of Orthodox Church. In fact, Polish people, by adopting the Catholic faith and standing by it exposed themselves to a number of attacks, not only for political reason, but also for the religious ones. History of Jasna Góra monastery and its precious painting is a good example of this. Jasna Góra was sacked by Hussites, an act regarded by some historians as a political and religious as well as just a robbery. Jasna Góra's famous and to a degree miraculous withstanding of Swedes' siege is well documented. In July 1655, Poland was invaded by Swedes coming from the north with the aim of building a grand Baltic empire bonded by Protestant faith. On November 18, 1655, after capturing most of the country and forcing the king to hide abroad, Swedes approached Jasna Góra. "We will have that hen house in 3 days," said Swedish General Müller, whilst he was standing under the ramparts of the monastery. However, despite of heavy artillery assaults, the monastery, with only a small number of defenders, held out. After 40 days, the Swedes withdrew. The attack on Jasna Góra was considered more as a violation of religious sentiments than as a political or military importance. So, although the Pauline abbot, Father Augustin Kordecki, led the defense, its success was attributed to the protective influence of Our Lady of Czestochowa. This was a tremendous significance for the entire kingdom, as after this victory, the whole country rose up against the Swedes, who had to retreat. This led to the proclamation that the Mother of God be patroness and Queen of Poland, declared by the King John Kazimierz on his return from exile in 1656. This was an act without precedence for a political figure, and it took place in the Cathedral of Lwów. The king's vow was duly confirmed and ratified by the two houses of the Polish parliament. Jasna Góra became therefore a symbol of religious and political liberty for the Polish people. In 1683, King Jan Sobieski prayed here for success in his crusade against Turks who invading Christian Europe and laid siege to Vienna at that time. He put himself and his army under the command of Our Lady. It is said that after the famous Vienna victory, when Europe was saved for Christianity, he stated, "I came, I saw, God won." On his return, he visited Jasna Góra again, gave thanks to the Black Madonna, and laid some trophies from the battle as a vote of offering. During the tragic decline of Polish state in 18th and 19th centuries, Jasna Góra continued to serve as a fortress against the enemies, but of more significance was the point of reference for the oppressed nation. So the image of Our Lady became a pledge for free Poland. The victory over Bolshevik armies in the Battle of Warsaw, so-called Miracle of Vistula, on the Feast of the Assumption 1920, was attributed to Our Lady's intercession. This victory saved not only newly reborn Polish state, but also prevented invasion by communists into Europe, devastated by the Great War. It is also believed she helped in the successful struggle against communism in 1980-89. Through the centuries, almost every aggressor of Poland understood well that the Catholic faith is the source of strength of Polish nation. So the invaders, with the aim of capturing and suppressing Poland, were fighting with the church. Priests were killed, churches burnt, monasteries attacked. The Nazi and the communist occupation are the example of it. The church was suffering because it has always stood behind the Polish people. Perhaps that is why Poland gave so many saints to the church, among them Saint Maximilian Kolbe. On the other hand, Polish people were defending the faith not only in their land, but also were active in defending Christian Europe, like Sobieski in Vienna. That is why the Polish people are so devoted to Our Lady of Czestochowa, and why she is so important to the Polish nation and to Poland. The Holy Father believes the Blessed Mother can play an important role in the life of nations as well as in the lives of individuals. Speaking to a great crowd at the grounds of Auckland Domain, he presented this gift as a symbol of unity of the nations and the unity of God's people. He also expressed hope that Our Lady of Czestochowa would be a source of inspiration for good and perseverance, especially in very difficult times. We must also remember that Jasna Góra is papal spiritual home. Thank you.
Good morning. Spiritual meaning of the shrine of Our Lady of Jasna Góra to the Holy Father, Pope John Paul II. On Sunday, May the 24th, 1942, the third year of German occupation, Karol Wojtyła, who had just turned 22, arrived in Częstochowa as a part of a two-day academic pilgrimage to the shrine of the Black Madonna, the Queen of Poland. He had participated before the war in mass pilgrimages to the luminous mountain, but this occasion carried for the young student very special meaning. 2 days earlier, Karol Wojtyła was arrested during a mass roundup by the security police. In the end, card identifying him as a worker in a vital industry freed him, while most of the men arrested at the same time were deported to Auschwitz, and 25 of them were executed by a firing squad against the wall of death at the camp. Now in Częstochowa, Karol prayed in the chapel where the image of the Black Madonna was unveiled. He and his fellow students swore an oath to the Madonna, pledging that, despite the raging terror, we, the Polish academic youth, standing inflexibly in the defense of the Holy Spirit, with faith in a better tomorrow, declare our oath on luminous mountain of Częstochowa. From now on, the Blessed Virgin of Jasna Góra has occupied his whole heart, protecting him during the 54 years of his priesthood and those of his service in the See of Peter. After the early years, when he tried to distance himself from the Marian devotion in order to focus more on Christ, Karol Wojtyla rediscovered her attraction in more mature form. Thanks to Saint Louis of Montfort, he came to understand that true devotion to Mother of God is Christocentric and is indeed profoundly rooted in the mystery of Blessed Trinity and the mysteries of the Incarnation and the Redemption. This devotion to Mother of God has stayed with him over the years, bearing fruits in the encyclicas Redemptoris Mater and Mulieris Dignitatem. He understands Mary as the new Eve, placed by God in close relation to Christ, the new Adam, beginning with Annunciation, through the night of his birth in Bethlehem, through the wedding feast at Cana of Galilee, through the cross at Calvary, and up to the gift of the Holy Spirit at Pentecost. The Mother of Christ, the Redeemer, is the Mother of the Church. His phrase, totus tuus, then, is not only an expression of piety or simply an expression of devotion. It means much more. Jasna Góra became part of the history of his homeland in the 17th century and retained its importance despite national tragedies and anti-Catholic political climate. During his first pilgrimage to Poland in 1979, standing on the hill of Jasna Góra, so dear to his heart, he thanked Mary for being the guiding star of a better future for the world and asked for her constant patronage for the attainment of the civilization of love among the members of the human race. Be not afraid.
In May 1981,
Be not afraid. These words spoken by Christ through the lips of his mother comprise a universal message which lures millions of Poles to the shrine throughout the centuries. She repeated these words to the Pope on May 13, 1981, when he was wounded by a gunshot fired in St. Peter's Square. Her presence in Vatican was felt then more than ever. The copy of Black Madonna took his place in those days on his papal throne, receiving prayers from thousands of pilgrims gathered at the St. Peter's Square. The victory, if it comes, will come through Mary. He saw then for himself how those words, spoken by dying Cardinal August Clont, were coming true. During his second pilgrimage to Poland in 1982, Pope John Paul II visited her sanctuary again and with thousands of pilgrims found a retreat at her side. The papal robe, stained by his own blood from St. Peter's Square, joined then his previous gift for the Black Madonna, a golden rose. He prayed, Mother of Jasna Góra and Queen, I come to you today on a pilgrimage of faith to thank you for your ceaseless protection of all the Church and of myself, for all good which has come to my own nation in years of profound transformation. I bring here, O Mother, all humanity, including those still searching for the way to Christ. Be their guide and help them to be open to the God who is coming. I bring to you in prayer the people of East and West, of North and South, and I entrust to your motherly care all the families of nation. Thank you.
Our Lady of Czestochowa. O Holy Virgin, who Częstochowa's shrine doth guard, wrote Poland's romantic bard Adam Mickiewicz, combining a deeply personal message with a fervent prayer for his partitioned homeland. It is difficult to fully understand the exiled poet's prayer without pondering what the Jasna Góra Shrine of Mary, the Queen of Poland, means for Poles. Indeed, it is impossible to understand Polish culture without probing into the heritage of Jasna Góra. This heritage comprises the nation's faith, her arts, and her struggle in the defense of the most sacrosanct values. It is here, over a bare 5 hectares of land, that the Polish nation's spiritual capital extends. A symbol that is always alive and relevant for Poles. The true importance of this place can be gauged solely by the depth of the spiritual experience of all those generations who for over 6 centuries have worshipped the Mother of God in her Black Madonna icon. The Marian sanctuary is situated on a limey hill known as Jasna Góra, which translates as Hill of Light, in the western part of Częstochowa. Its beginnings go back to 1382, when a Paulite monastery was founded on the site by Duke Ladislaus of Opole, a Silesian magnate wielding considerable political influence during the reign of Louis of Anjou, the king of both Poland and Hungary. It is assumed that by bringing the Paulites from Hungary, the Duke of Opole wished to consolidate the Anjou dynasty in Poland. The historical significance of that decision surpassed, however, the political considerations of the day. Indeed, the establishment of the Paulite monastery proved to be the foundation stone for the cultural universality of Polish Catholicism. Already in the Middle Ages, the establishment of the Jasna Góra monastery was attributed to the miraculous intervention of the Mother of God herself. Legend had it that the horses pulling a cart carrying the icon from Ruthenia to Silesia stopped on a hill which is called the Hill of Light and refused to go any further. The Duke took it as a sign from heaven. He pledged to leave the picture at the place designated by Holy Mary herself, and founded a monastery in which it would be protected. So much for the legend. And what does history say? On the evidence of the documents signed on June 22nd, 1382, Father Henryk Biel, in charge of the Częstochowa parish, handed over a wooden church to the Paulite order. Within days, the first monks arrived at the site. On August 9th of the same year, Duke Ladislaus laid down the active foundation of the Paulite monastery. According to tradition, it was then that he presented the monks with the miraculous picture of Our Lady, which he had found in Ruthenia. In fact, the claims of the icon's eastern provenance are not fully corroborated by historical sources. Several other theories have been propounded on the picture's history and place of origin. Some researchers even argue that it is not a Byzantine icon, but an image rooted in Western European culture. However, most recent research carried out during the conservation of the painting seems to confirm the theory of its Eastern origin. Traces of arrows were discovered in the sub-painting, a fact which indirectly testifies to Tartar attacks on the painting at a time when it was in Bell's Castle in Ruthenia in the 1370s. The debate concerns not only the place, but also the date of the painting's origin. According to ancient tradition, the picture was painted by St. Luke on a panel formed from the top of a table of the Holy Family of Nazareth. The evangelist is said to have depicted the Holy Virgin Mary at the request of the faithful, who wanted him to capture on canvas the beauty of the Mother of the Redeemer. One should not look for historical truth in this legend. However, one cannot fail to notice the deep religious thought it contains. Indeed, the picture was born out of the Church's faith. The tradition of the icons of Mary being painted by St. Luke is as much about the universal character of the Church. St. Luke is said to have painted 2 such pictures, which already during the reign of Emperor Constantine were transferred to the eastern and western parts of the Roman Empire. Legend further added that the Constantinople original was later transported to Ruthenia. However, it is impossible to ascertain beyond doubt that the icon of Our Lady of Czestochowa was brought from Ruthenia. Present-day art historians claim it was painted around 1240. The type of Madonna with child on her left arm, known as Hodegetria, points to the Eastern origin. The Constantinople original was destroyed by the Turks in 1453, but many versions and copies of it have been preserved. The most famous of them is Our Lady of Czestochowa.
Zdrowaś Maryjo, łaski pełna Pan z Tobą, błogosławionaś Ty między niewiastami i błogosławiony owoc żywota Twojego, Jezus. Święta Maryjo, Matko Boża, módl się za nami grzesznymi, teraz i w godzinę śmierci naszej.
The painting has long evoked religious admiration. The famous 15th century historian Jan Długosz could not conceal his deep personal reflections when he wrote, "They show a picture of Mary, the most glorious and the most venerable Virgin, the Queen of the world and of the Poles, which has been executed with a strange and extraordinary skill, with a serene expression on her face from whatever direction you look at it." Looking at this picture, one is pervaded with a sense of peculiar piety, as if looking at a living person. Długosz confirms the popular devotion to the picture, as well as the fact that pilgrims arrived to the Jasna Góra shrine from Poland and abroad, from Silesia, Moravia, Prussia, and Hungary. The great historian also described the destruction of the painting. A party of robbers connected with the Hussite movement raided the monastery on Easter Day in 1430. Having found no treasures, Długosz wrote, they sacrilegiously reached out for sacred objects, such as chalices, crosses, and ornaments. They even stripped the picture of Our Lady of precious stones and jewels with which it had been embellished by pious believers. They did not stop at that, but slashed the image with a sword and broke the panel on which the picture was painted. In my opinion, that attack had a threefold purpose. Firstly, it was sheer assault and robbery. Secondly, it was an act of sacrilege. The third motive was political. As for robbery, well, the Jasna Góra sanctuary contains many treasures, votive offerings in gold and so on. All this allured the looters of the time. The damaging of the painting had an evidently sacrilegious character. It was the so-called iconoclastic rite. Very much like a ticket collector on the train cancels her ticket with the stroke of a pencil, the picture was struck off with a sword. As for the political factor, an attempt was made to set the Lithuanian Prince Witold at loggerheads with the Polish King Władysław Jagiełło. The king, thinking that the attack was perpetrated by the Hussites, wanted to declare war on Bohemia. According to historical records, the robbers came from Poland and Bohemia. The damaged and profaned picture was given protection by King Jagiełło, who early on in his reign, competing for influence with Duke Ladislaus of Opole, renewed the active foundation of the Jasna Góra monastery in a document issued in Kraków on the 24th of February, 1394. In the wake of the tragedy, the monks took the picture to Kraków and asked the king to help in its repair. Eventually, the painting underwent 2 repairs. First, the task was entrusted to painters from the east recommended by the king. However, it turned out that paint ran from the picture the day after the job had been completed. Only then was the task entrusted to artists from Central Europe or Italy, imperial artists as they were called, and it was they who succeeded in restoring the Black Madonna picture. Their work meant a departure from the Byzantine pattern. They made the Madonna's features more tender, introduced the light and shade effect, and added the ornaments on the robes according to the canons of Gothic art. In fact, they produced almost a new painting. The slashes on the face of the Madonna were preserved by applying vermilion lines on the right cheek. In this way, an object of art came to embody the drama of history, the struggle between good and evil, and between beauty and destruction. Indeed, what makes the Jasna Góra picture unique is that it is deeply rooted in the nation's history. Perhaps that is why it holds such a magnetic power for Poles who discover their national identity here and can entrust their most personal problems to the Mother of God. Since the very beginning of its presence in Czestochowa, the picture of Our Lady has attracted pilgrims from far beyond Poland. Like Poles themselves, they find a visit to the Black Madonna Chapel a most profound experience. The 17th century poet Vespasian Kochowski wrote in a votive poem, "For every man of Catholic faith, to be at the mount of the Holy Virgin is a source of true joy." In his hymn, the poet makes a long list of countries from where the pilgrims flock to Jasna Góra. He speaks of those traveling from the lands along the banks of the rivers Danube, Volga, Don, and Vistula. He also mentions pilgrims from Lithuania, Courland, and Livonia to the north, as well as from Hungary, Moravia, and Silesia. All of them, the poet said, come to Czestochowa with humble prayers to Our Lady. The hymn by Vespasian Kochowski is an eloquent proof of the supra-regional devotion to the Black Madonna icon, encompassing entire Central and Eastern Europe. Last year, the most sizable groups came from English-speaking countries. Over 10,000 pilgrims came from the United States. We had 8,500 German-speaking visitors. France was next on the list, with over 3,000, followed by Italy. The number of pilgrims is growing from year to year, and this is facilitated by 2 factors: the opening of Polish borders and the expansion of accommodation facilities for pilgrims.
Polski są bardziej otwarte, łatwość jest przybywania pielgrzymów, także poprawiają się warunki lokalowe, gdzie pielgrzymi mogą się zatrzymać i niejako tutaj być przy Matce Bożej.
Jasna Góra became a place of gathering. It emanates as a center of devotion to Our Lady in Poland and all over the world. Its focal point is the picture of the Virgin Mary, which combines the features common to Eastern and Western rites in Christianity. At present, the significance of the Jasna Góra shrine assumes a truly universal dimension. This also thanks to the pilgrimages of Pope John Paul II, celebrations of the World Youth Day, and the continuous presence of pilgrims from all corners of the world.
Did you not find that presentation inspiring? Yeah. I want to thank the people who made that presentation because I found that very uplifting as a Catholic. I found it very inspiring. So I want to leave you really with a question. Where do we go from here? Darius has made it perfectly clear to us in his presentation that the shrine, indeed the veneration of the Blessed Virgin, in whatever form and wherever it exists, is not just a question of a religious practice or a religious enthusiasm. He's made it perfectly clear in his presentation regarding the spiritual significance of this particular icon that the love and veneration of Christ's mother is about the establishment and the maintenance of identity. Posed in that way, we should have the courage, we should ask God's mother for the courage to pursue the implications of this question. With this beautiful gift from the only Pope in the history of the Church to visit New Zealand, from this beautiful gift, where do we go as a Catholic people from here? Thank you.
We'll be in trouble. We're running a few moments late. Now, next on our program is a healing meeting, which is a first at our Eucharistic conventions. It's been organized by Sister Alice Hardiman, who's a missionary sister